the desire to want to be understood, to be mirrored, make you and I a narcissist? This is one of the many questions we're going to deal with on this episode of Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. Hi, I'm Dr. Carrie Kerr-McAvoy, and I'm looking forward to taking audience's questions on this replay of a TikTok Live. Thank you so much for your reviews. Please don't forget to subscribe. And as a listener-supported podcast, your contributions are much appreciated. We are born with an innate need to be special, to be seen, to be understood. There is nothing more hard and toxic and dangerous when our family is unable to do this for us. When we are born into a family that is very unhealthy, dysfunctional, even have personality disorders. I wonder how many is struggling with this very thing. Why we are not able to be seen and appreciated and celebrated for who we are. Why we end up in the position of taking care of those in our lives instead of being taken care of. I know for myself, it was very difficult to grow up in a dysfunctional home. To the outside world, we looked very beautiful. We looked fantastic. We dressed up. We went to church. My parents were active in the community. My father even had a large garden, and he gave away tons of vegetables to the homeless shelters. My mother volunteered. They served on church committees. They looked beautiful from the outside. You would not know on the inside that it was very difficult to get even our most basic needs met, how unsafe we were, how often we were put into danger and left to fend for ourselves. For those of you who are new to me, I'm Dr. Carrie Kerr-McAvoy. I'm a clinical psychologist. I have over 20 years of counseling experience. These days, I primarily talk about narcissistic abuse. I'm also a writer, blogger, and write about these issues as well. And I have a club. So if you're looking for support, you're looking for a community to belong to where I am as well, we can chat, we can support each other, take challenges, mental health challenges, check out the Toxic Free Relationship Club. So how are you doing today? Let's check in. How's it going? For those of you who may have noticed, I went to Coldplay on Friday. That for me was part of a taking back experience. It was 5 years ago that I sat in a first Coldplay concert ever. And with my new husband, I'd had no idea that he had been seeing other people, seeing other women. And in the audience was his daughter, or daughter to the girlfriend he'd been seeing. In the audience was a daughter to the girlfriend he'd been seeing, and she spotted us. And it led to the girlfriend contacting me, exploding my world, and led to 2 years of hell, which I wrote about in a book. It came out in February called Love You More, The Harrowing Tales of Lies, Sex Addiction, and Double Cross. So it was quite an experience. I closed my practice in 2015 when my 31-year-long marriage was coming to a close because my husband was diagnosed with cancer. And 5.5 months later, he was gone and I was widowed. And that's when I met this toxic guy who basically wore a mask. I thought I met Mr. Wonderful. I had a list of qualities. I wanted someone who was educated, who had a strong faith, somebody who, similar to me in stage of life. And that's who I thought I met. What I didn't know was that it was a mask. And I'm sure many of you can identify with that you thought you met a soulmate. In fact, I didn't even believe in the idea of soulmates until I met this person, because I just thought it was sort of like, woo-woo, stupid stuff, until I met somebody that had so perfectly mirrored me, not realizing that I was being mirrored, that I didn't really authentically know this individual until 2 months into the marriage, when that girlfriend caught up with us, sent me a note and wrote and said, it was actually, now that I'm thinking about it, kind of a hostile statement she made. She said, so I guess the joke's not just on me, but on you too. I've been dating him for 3 months. That's how I found out. Kathy's writing, my dad is the worst and my mom is busy. I wonder, can you say more, Kathy? How's that going, that you've had very toxic parents? That's common. In fact, there's 2 good books. If you guys are looking for resources, if you have had an absent mother particularly, you might want to check out this book. It's written by Jasmine Lee Corey. Jasmine Lee Corey is called The Emotionally Absent Mother. The Emotionally Absent Mother by Jasmine Lee Corey. Another very, very good book, and you're probably familiar with this name if you read a lot of stuff about narcissistic abuse. It's by Susan Forward. It's called Mothers Who Can't Care. Or, I'm sorry, Mothers Who Can't Love. Mothers Who Can't Love. And then one of them that I've been doing a lot of, I've been actually taking courses with her, and I'm trying to find it. It's on the other side of my computer. Here it is. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. It's written by Lindsay Gibson. I've been listening to her seminars and taking some continuing education classes with her, and this book is awesome. Her material is really, really awesome. She calls emotionally immature anyone who is actually what we would call as toxic, as dysfunctional, or as narcissistically abusive. She's just referring to it ego-wise, what kind of, how we're dealing with that. So as a result of that, is mirroring a sure sign of a narcissist? That's a really great question. Let me kind of define exactly what that is. Mirroring actually is something we're all doing all the time. In fact, if you've ever noticed when you sit down to someone, have you ever noticed if you sat down with someone and you kind of point your body in their direction and you could form a loop with them, like a circle with them, that is mirroring. You're mirroring their body language. And the reason we do it often unconsciously. And we do it because it signals a compatibility, rapport. It develops a sense of trust and safety. So it's not a bad thing. In fact, when you have children and they come and they have like a boo-boo, something they fall and they skin their knees, and you go, oh, that must hurt so bad. See, you're mirroring. When you do that, you're mirroring. And that's very necessary as part of emotional development. We need to have people know that we're attuned. And we're aware of when someone's not mirroring us well. Say, for example, you come talk about a problem, and what happens is that when they say, this really upset me, and they said, well, it sounds like you're hurt. No, I'm mad. Whenever they kind of correct you, that's telling you that you weren't mirroring very well. Now, why is it sometimes toxic? Well, it's normal and healthy and wonderful when we do it for the right reasons. But when we're doing it for reasons of manipulation or for reasons to hide, because we don't want someone to take advantage, to know us, we want actually to get into their head so that we can manipulate them, then it becomes toxic. And there's this idea called theory of mind. Have you ever heard of that? Theory of mind is when you are able to kind of anticipate someone else's needs. We all do it, by the way. We develop the skill by age around 4. Typically when kids start lying, it's when they already kind of figured out their parents' hot button and kind of how to work the system and get around a little bit. When you're able to do that, that's mind mapping. You're kind of figuring out what makes other people tick, and you're using that to your advantage. So when you mirror with the purpose of deception or the purpose of manipulation, that's dysfunctional. So it's not wrong to mirror. We're all mirroring all the time. It's just how and why we're mirroring that's problematic. Now, why do people do that? Well, some of us are so fragile, our ego is so brittle and not strong that we hide by mirroring other people, by showing up in the way that they want us to, because we don't want to risk their rejection or risk them not liking us, or maybe that we feel very uncomfortable and ashamed. So it's a way for us to hide who we are. That's when it gets toxic. Great question. Thank you so much. Why do they know that they're actually hurting people? Well, that's a yes and a no. I mean, they know they're doing something wrong, because if they didn't know it was wrong, then why hide, right? Why protect the lie? Why lie? Why not just come out and say what you want the way that you want it? You know it's not socially acceptable, so that's why they're creating deception. But do they know that they're actually destroying other people? Do they know that they're tearing us apart, causing brain damage? Actually, there's been research showing that there's changes in the brain when we have been chronically in these relationships. Do they know that? I don't think they're always aware. I think it kind of ranges on a continuum. I think there's some of us, Some people, by the way, I use us because we all fall on the spectrum of narcissism. None of us are not narcissistic. We all have a little tendency towards it. The question is, to what degree? Are you sometimes just a little emotionally immature? Or are you actually practicing an active practice of deception and manipulation? We kind of range in the continuum. So, but I also think that we also range in the degree we're ruthless. Not all of us. Some of us have pretty kind hearts and we want good things for others. And others of us see the world as very competitive, very warlike, very us against them. So the more that you have the tendency to see it that way, the more you're going to be very warlike, very self-protective, and very ruthless in your interactions with people. So the more further down you are in that continuum, then the more you are going to be aware of what you're doing and being very intentional about what you're doing. I would say there are types of narcissists. They're kind of like, they're not great people to be around. They're not easy. But on the other hand, they aren't very aware. But then when you meet those who have more psychopathic or sociopathic tendencies, you meet the malignant narcissist or the narcissistic sociopath, or you meet the sociopath or psychopath. Yes, they are aware of what they're doing. It's intentional. They are using you for their own benefits because they don't believe anyone actually has their back. And so as a result, for them, it's a dog, literally eat dog world, and they will consume you because they believe, by the way, that you're consuming them. So have you ever noticed how they kind of ascribe really awful things to you? Like they believe you do the same things that they're doing to you? Well, that's because in their worldview, they see that. That's how they interpret things. The girlfriend found a new boyfriend after 1 month after a break. Is it abuse? To me, I don't know whether or not was it a supply situation? Do you feel like she was using you for supply and has now moved on to the new person? Or are you questioning the rapidness of jumping from one relationship to another? Yes, that's actually really rapid. I agree. It's probably not very healthy. I'm sure she's not done the work of grieving, processing what has happened to the two of you, why it didn't work out. I'm sure she's really not actually emotionally ready to be in another relationship. This may even be a rebound. But I can't say just because it was fast that it was abusive. But I'd want to know more details. But I'm sorry. For one thing, it's hurtful to have somebody do this to us. It's very, very hurtful. So I feel terrible hearing that happened. It makes you wonder how replaceable you are. That's what it feels like when someone does that to us. It feels like we're not significant, that this wasn't a big thing, and it was a big thing. If you had your heart invested, it was a big thing. But what I've found is some people can't really sit with pain very well. They avoid pain, and they use relationships as a way to do that, along with other things, like alcohol or drugs or any other thing that we use that kind of minimizes the painfulness of something. We use distract. So and when you see someone doing that, it's definitely a sign of someone who's not very psychologically or emotionally mature. But you have my sympathy. It's really, really tough. I'm sorry that happened. Are there good narcissists who aren't trying to harm? This has been a big topic on TikTok. I know that there's been a lot of controversy about self-aware narcissists. Is that even possible? I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. As I've said, we're all on the continuum. You are on the narcissistic continuum. I don't know where you are on it. Maybe you just have a few symptoms. We all want to be special, right? And don't you love it when you get privileges? I mean, when I get to walk into that business lounge in the airport, I like how that makes me feel. In that moment, I'm a little narcissistic. Now, it's not wrong that I do that. I'm not hurting anyone when I do that. But when I start to take advantage and cannibalize other people, that's problematic. You're then quite far down the line of narcissistic abuse. So if you pull back the lens and say, are all people with lots of narcissistic traits toxic and harmful? Can anyone ever recover? This is what I view it. We all have what's called ego strengths. They're things like, do you see reality as the way that it really is? Are you able to resist impulses? Do you have good control over your emotions? Are you in touch with your emotions? Do you have empathy? Are you able to put yourself in someone else's position? Do you show good judgment? Are you able to sort of pause and reflect back on yourself and why you do what you do? All of these things make up our ego. And all of us, we're weak or strong on each category, depending on who we are and how we're doing and where we are in life. The problem with those who are further down the end of the narcissistic spectrum is they tend to be weak on a couple critical ones. They tend to be very weak around self-reflection because it's painful to stop and look brutally honest at the mirror and say, what did I just do? Why did I do what I did to this person? Why am I using people the way I'm using them? Why am I exaggerating things and cutting corners and cheating and abusing and lying? Why am I doing that? They don't have a lot of strength, ego strength, to sit and do that. So imagine this. This is an analogy I've been using. Imagine that you're trying to build a house and you don't have a measuring tape and you don't have a level. How straight, how nice of a house is that going to be? It's going to be pretty crooked. So as a result of that, it's going to be miserable to live in that house. Doors won't shut. Things will roll across the floor. I mean, it's going to be miserable. Nothing's level. It's dangerous. It could be even right down. How do you walk down steps that aren't level, right? So trying to get healthy when you lack these skills is really hard. It's really hard. Now, is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. I've known a few people who've gotten better. Now, are they easy people to live with? Probably not. They probably never will be. But are they out there deliberately trying to maliciously hurt people? No, I know that they're not. They're working hard not to. It is possible, but this means you have to get the tools that you're missing and do the extremely hard work of taking a long look at yourself and at all the string of damage you've done and face your worst fears. I mean, see, the narcissist core is to say, what if people find out that I'm not all that and I don't have any relationships? That's at a very deep unconscious pre-verbal level. That is their fear. Their fear is that they're going to be found out and that they're a fake. And in order to get healed, you have to look at that brutally honest and say, yeah, actually, I have been faking it. I am not all that. I need to really get my shit together. And how many people do you know have the strength to do that? They're rare. Can they? Sure, but that's rare. That's why we tell people they don't change. Stop looking for change. Focus on yourself. They have to want it. That's why this video I posted today, you can't love someone enough to heal them. You can't try hard enough to make them motivated to be invested in this relationship. They have to decide to do that work all on their own. You have no control, no power to make that happen. That's one of the hardest things I had to come to terms with because I had made it my life to help people change. I really had. So it was painful for me to see the reality of I can't love someone healthy. Sandra Brown has a saying that I love. She says, you can't love someone's brown eyes blue. Stop trying. They have to find the skills and the wherewithal and the strength and the determination to walk out of that very dark, toxic place. It's not anything any of us can do for them. So thanks for that question. It was a very tough question, but I appreciate it. Can narcissism vary over time? That's a great question. By the way, so does borderline personality disorder. It also varies over time. So one of the things research has found is that with time, those who are borderline personality disorders tend to get better. They tend to, as they age, some of the worst symptoms tend to modify and soften and are not as intense. My father was diagnosable as a borderline personality disorder, and at the end of his life, he was able to be more self-reflective, and he was less aggressive and impulsive. I did see a change. Now, I don't know what the research is on narcissistic personality disorder, but my personal experience has been as they worsen. They don't get better, they get worse. That's my fear, but I'll look into that so that I can speak on research, not just on my own personal experience. But what I've seen is that they're really trying to, is that they tend to, ramp up. They don't tend to get quieter and softer. I wish it was the other way around. But it is interesting how that varies. I think also there are other mitigating effects. Like, for example, are there things impacting cognitive functioning? They have experiences that sort of damage the brain, like they're suffering mini strokes or have congestive heart failure or heart problems or anything that kind of decreases blood flow to the brain that can cause, other symptoms that can look more narcissistic for sure. I think one of them I would recommend is Craig Mulkin. He has one called, it's the title is so close to Sam Bankman's, I kind of confused the two. But Craig Mulkin has one that talks a lot about narcissism and thinking about narcissism and what is it that's readable. Not all of them are, some of them are theoretical and hard to read. Is relationship hopping a narcissistic trait? Well, it can be, but it can also just be a trait of someone who's avoiding painfulness of being alone. I mean, a lot of us have a fear of being on our own, and so we use relationships as a way to avoid that. Yeah, certainly you'll see those who are narcissistic do the same thing. See, this is one of the hard parts. Very rarely are there characteristics that are only one type of a problem. There are a lot of other problems that overlap or look similar. Like, say, for example, let's take something completely unrelated. Let's say you have knee pain. Well, it could be because of arthritis. It could be because you had a sports injury. It could be because you have an infection in your knee. But each one of those are very separate things. They're different conditions, right? They're not the same thing, but they have the same symptom of knee pain. So likewise, you can have the symptom of relationship hopping, but it could occur for lots of different reasons. It could be that you are a narcissist and you're using it for supply, but it also could be that you also could be, someone who's afraid to be alone and hasn't worked through that. Or maybe you don't have a community, you don't have a support system, so you're using your romantic relationships as support. So there are lots of reasons why that happens, and I don't know the particular, but I would say, yeah, it's a sign of something, for sure. It's a sign of something they're struggling with, for sure. So how do you deal with a high maintenance friendship? I think one of the ways I would answer that question is, what kind of boundaries are you holding, and why is it hard to maintain different boundaries with this person? To me, when I hear the word high maintenance, that means somebody wants a lot more from you than you always feel able to give. Now, are they pressuring you? Are you feeling manipulated by that? Is this person gaslighting you? Are they shaming you in order to making you to show up for them? Or is it more that you're having a struggle saying no? You don't really know how to kind of put better limits around it. So that would be what I would wonder. So what I would recommend is that you take a long look at yourself and what is it that you need to do so you show up more for yourself. Maybe set some different kind of limits with this person, sort of protect your interests as well. Make sure that it's a little more fair, a little more reciprocity to it than there currently is. Here's what I found. This is so forgive me for the crude example, okay? But what I've noticed, if you've ever put, I grew up in the 1960s. So those days, what you did is if the dog was outside, you put him on a chain. Now, I know now today we tend to keep dogs in fences or on dog runs, so we don't do that so often. But I'm going to use this old-fashioned example, okay? If you give that dog a 10-foot chain, it's going to take all 10 feet, right? Why would it not take 10 feet? It's going to take all the leverage, all the space you give it to run, it's going to do that. So, but if you shorten it to 5, then it can only go 5 feet. What we often do is we want people to live in a lesser limit. We want people to sort of respect our boundaries, but we don't put any limitations to that. We give them more space than we actually want them to use. So say, for example, you only have an hour on the phone, and then next thing you know, the phone call's gone an hour and a half. It's because we haven't said, hey, I got to get going. We wait for them to sort of pick up the cues from us, and when they don't, then they end up taking advantage of us because we haven't stopped it. So if I were you, I would take a look at what's getting in the way of you doing that and seeing if you can have different kinds of boundaries to protect yourself a little bit better. If they're high maintenance, it's because they've been allowed to get away with it for most people in their life, unfortunately. If you've been around me any length of time, you know that I'm a big fan of Kristen Milstead, Dr. Kristen Milstead. She wrote the book, Why Can't I Just Leave? I'm interviewing her August 17th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to do an interview, and I will be, this is already, you can buy tickets to this. The link is in my bio. It's $25 for that night. It's $30 if you want to replays to it. It's going to be amazing, guys. She takes all the best research, synthesizes and explains why we get stuck in these toxic relationships. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and bye-bye.